Hey bestie, it's time for your next session of Real Talk Friend Therapy with your favorite big sister auntie queen, Daysha Veronica. Hey y'all, what up, what up? I hope you're feeling better this week and that you're giving yourself space to feel what you need to feel. And, if you're still grieving, I just want you to know that it's okay. Shoot, I'm still grieving too. But I keep reminding myself that grief is not a short emotional process. It takes the time that it takes. And I saw this really helpful graphic on Pinterest the other night where it illustrates the event of losing someone or something as a big whole. And then over a series of images, it shows that when we experience loss, it's not that the whole gets any smaller, but rather that our life grows around it. So, that huge impact of the whole will always be the size of the whole. But it feels less gaping because our life begins to grow around it. So I offer that to say that I think for a good chunk of us, this election has fundamentally changed something in us. I know it has for me. It has created that big gaping hole. And for some of us, it's been hard to grapple with having this hole. And I think that's especially true if you are someone who tends to be optimistic or you're someone who loves to see the good in all situations. And I know that can feel scary because the shift is pushing you in a darker direction. It's pushing you in a less hopeful direction. And for some of us, there might be this urge to want to reject those feelings and still be that cheery, optimistic, and hopeful person. You might not like what I'm gonna say, but I'm gonna say it. I think you do yourself a huge disservice by trying to reject or rush through feeling those darker feelings. Again, I'm not a therapist. Always take what I say and work in conjunction with a therapist. But I don't think that experiencing these dark feelings right now, as long as we're not talking about suicide, is a bad thing. And I don't think that you should try to rush towards being positive right away because it's ultimately not going to be authentic positivity. There's this book called Toxic Positivity that's been on my to-read list for a while. I cannot wait to dig into it because while positivity is an admirable trait, I think we've lost the plot as a society as to what it means to be authentically positive in this day and age. The day after the election, Becky and I were on the couch and she was scrolling on social and this video popped up of a woman just stuffing your ears with all of this positive mishmash and all of these empty sayings. Just, she was saying a whole lot of words, but also a whole lot of nothing. And in that moment, for me at least, I was like, that's toxic positivity. I'm so down for you giving this speech. I'm so down for your desire to want to rally the troops in a moment of darkness. But for real, not right after the blow. I need to be angry for a minute. I need to be despondent for a minute. And honestly, you need to be angry and despondent for a minute. It actually reminds me of when I got let go from my job earlier this year. The HR lady, The HR lady was trying to be real nice and send me off all positively about losing my job. And she's like, I'm a life coach on the side. And, something I love to say to my clients who are facing hard news is that I hope this creates a catalyst for you. I hope that in time, this is the hard decision that leads to great things for you. And here's the thing. I actually like everything she said. I think everything she said is valid. But what I do not like is the fact that she's trying to inspire me and make me feel good about losing my job. Bitch, I don't care. I'm being let go. I'm still gonna think you're an asshole for letting me go. I don't want your inspiration. I want to claw your face off, okay? Save it. I don't want it. And this is not me saying that you need to be callous or uncaring about how you terminate someone from their job. But again, trying to rally the troops when someone is literally bleeding out in front of you is so dumb. I need to deal with my wound first, and then I can rally, and then I can be inspired and hopeful. but I cannot be hopeful when I'm bleeding out and there's no fucking medic. Everything that's being said will not be heard and means absolutely nothing to me. And honestly, makes me angrier, which gets my blood pumping, and I lose more blood in this dark analogy. So before I jump into today's topic, I just wanted to say that if you are a naturally positive person and you are hurting after these election results, it's okay for you to not be positive for a while. It's okay for you to not have the right words right now. Half the country just played in your face and said that your safety and existence, whether that be as a queer person or a woman or a Black person, does not matter to them as long as they can get an extra $20 in their paycheck. Like, that's some deep shit. That's a serious blow. You do not need to be a light for anyone right now. And again, the reason why I think it's a huge disservice to you is because we teach people how we want to be treated. And if you put on this image of positivity in the face of dark shit so soon, all you're teaching people is that they should be able to expect this energy from you anytime shit hits the fan. And a lot of shit is going to be hitting the fan in the next 4 years. Copious amounts of shit. And so I just don't think you want to be on the hook for being the positive person in the face of that. And I also just think it's not emotionally healthy or realistic for someone to be so immediately positive in the face of some real dark shit. To me, that's a huge sign that maybe you don't know how to process your emotions, or that your emotions are something that you avoid feeling and maybe bottle up. And as someone who feels like the queen of bottling up her emotions, I'm telling you that it does nothing good for you. So, don't feel like you have to rush to be a light for everyone else. But also, don't resist if your light shines in a different way now because of what has happened. Don't beat yourself up if you struggle to be fully optimistic in the same way that you once were. Because real talk, that person is gone now. The environment in which that person existed is gone now. And so it means that your optimism is on a journey to figure out how to thrive in these current conditions, how to exist in these current conditions, let alone thrive. And that takes time. You'll find it, but it definitely takes time. Okay, moving on. So if you follow astrology, then you know that we have a Mercury retrograde coming up. And if you don't follow astrology, then I'm here to let you know that we have a Mercury retrograde coming up. And I feel like Mercury retrograde it's one of the few pieces of astrology lingo that has broken into the mainstream, but not in the most accurate or helpful way. And so for today, I'm going to do a light discussion on what Mercury retrograde is because of how it relates to reconnection. And during the holiday season, we are constantly being reintroduced to people from our past. And I want to show how we can use this period that is often known for its chaos and its unbearableness to our benefit, especially when it comes to potentially rekindling a relationship from the past. Okay, so what is Mercury retrograde? In astrology, Mercury is known as the planet that rules communication, relationships, technology, and contracts. And so for those that are new to the world of astrology, each planet has a realm that they rule. So for example, Mars is the planet that rules how you take action. Venus is how you connect and show love with others. And so when we are born, the planets are in certain positions and angles that are specific and unique to you, and can inform certain traits or characteristics that you'll end up having. That's why when I meet people who say they hate horoscopes, I'm like, oh yeah, me too. Or I should say that I hate the horoscopes that you'll find like in the back of Cosmo or just, in the back of a magazine in general, because they're often super generalized and real talk, they're kind of just vehicles to sell you shit. But when you get deep into the world of astrology, and I can post some people that I follow, all of those unique planet placements really matter when getting into understanding the intricacies of who you are. So I actually got into astrology because my grandmother was into it, which when I think about it, it's kind of crazy because she was very active in the church. And I know a common misconception for people who are religious is that astrology is basically devil's work. But yeah, grandma was about it, y'all. She knew what was up. Man, thinking about this makes me miss her. She passed away in 2019, and I just love thinking about how we have this connection of astrology. It's like I always knew it, but I kind of forgot about it for a second. But yeah, so she used to have these like little astrology plaques over her bed. And they gave these details about her and my grandfather's signs. She was a Pisces and he was a Leo. And then for my birthday one year, she gave me kind of like my own version. It was like this little paper thing that you hang up. And it talked about the good and the bad things about being a Leo because I am also a Leo. And the thing that I remember most poignantly from reading that sign she gave me was that Leos are really egotistical and they need to keep their ego in check, and that we're quick to anger and fast to forgive. And there are aspects to being a Leo that I identify with. Like, I super identify with the being quick to anger but fast to forgive. I got a mouth, y'all. I'm like nice, but when you really know me, I got a mouth. I have this sign in my office. It's like one of my favorite signs. It says, I have a good heart, but this mouth, ... And it is, I've never felt so seen by a sign. But a super common trait that comes to mind for people when they think about Leos is basically like that we're big attention whores. We love to be in the spotlight. And for me, when I read that or, heard that, I was like, oh, that's not me at all. Now, this is not to say that I don't like the spotlight, but I don't crave it the way that we're painted out as being. A lot of people have even told me that when they meet me, they're kind of surprised to learn that I'm a Leo because off the bat, I don't act the way that most Leos they know act. And I'm like, you just haven't seen it yet, though. It's there. It's just more subtle. But I offer this to say that even I was like, my sun sign doesn't fully represent who I am. So as I continued to learn more, that's when I learned about my birth chart. And your birth chart is essentially the unique placement of where all those planets were at the exact time that you were born, which is why it's really important to know your specific birth time. And I can link to a site where you can find out your birth chart. And you can find all of this out for free. Like most places, they will tell you what the placements are for free. And then if you want more intricate detail, you would have to pay for that. But the place that I'm going to link to will give you all of your information for free. The two main pieces of information you need to have to do it are your birth time and what city you were born in. Now, you don't have to have your birth time to access the whole chart, but I do believe that your birth time informs your rising sign, so you just won't know what that is. But for me, once I unlocked and understood my full birth chart, I found a lot more truth and a lot more insight into my personality than what my sun sign could give me. I felt like my birth chart verbalized things that I did, but I didn't know how to explain. And it really painted a vivid picture of these unique ways of thinking or behaving that I did that I didn't realize could be, one, verbalized, but two, influenced by all these planets. So again, the reason why I don't fully feel encapsulated by my sun sign, which is Leo, and your sun sign is the common sign that everyone knows about. It's the sign based on your birthday. But the reason why I don't feel fully represented is because my rising sign is Scorpio. And your rising sign is essentially how you present to the world. It's the vibe that people get from you when first meeting you. So when I learned that it was in Scorpio for me, I was like, yes, that is me. In a past episode, I think I talked about how I have real strong cat energy. And part of that is because similarly to a house cat, I'm not the most friendly when you first meet me. I'm not mean. I'm not mean in any way, but I'm sniffing you out. especially if I'm in a large group setting. I'm not the one in the center of the room. I'm on the side, I'm people watching, and when I'm ready, I'll approach. But only when I'm ready. And that aligns way more with the characteristics of a Scorpio than a Leo. Now, once I've warmed up and I have a sense of who you are and I'm comfortable, you'll see that Leo side. But the best way that I've been described was by one of my teachers. He was like, Daysha's reserved, and she's definitely watching me. And I was like, that's right. Okay, so going back to planet placements and Mercury, there are about 3 or 4 times in a given year where Mercury appears to be moving backwards in the sky, which is actually an optical illusion. Mercury is closer to the sun than Earth, so its orbit around the sun is much shorter. And so that's what creates that illusion that Mercury was going backwards from our perspective. Now, all the planets go through retrograde periods, and a retrograde is essentially when a planet is in a sleeping or resting state. So the belief is that when the planet is resting, the aspects that it governs are more prone to being in disarray because there's no one at the wheel. Again, all the planets retrograde, but because Mercury is closer to Earth than the others, Mercury retrogrades appear much more frequently than the others, and we feel them more strongly. Hence why astrology people are always talking about it. Mars is actually going to go retrograde soon until like February, I think. So prepare for nothing to get done between December and February. All right, so I know you cynics are going to be out here like, well, it's the holidays. Nothing gets done during then anyway, Daysha. Again, the difference will be in your desire to get things done. It's one thing if the post office closes early because it's the holiday season. It's another thing if you don't even feel like driving to the post office, but it's the last day to send what you need to send to get it there on time. When Mars is in retrograde, it's not that you can't get things done. It's just that it will feel more like an uphill battle. You might notice it taking more effort or energy than what you're used to exerting. I mean, I'll say for me, because when we're in a retrograde, there's also what's known as a shadow period. And so that's when the planet is getting ready to retrograde. And so some signs can even feel the effects of that. And let me tell you, trying to get this episode out, I was just like, I do not want to do it. But it's just like, I have no reason to not want to do it. So I'm already feeling the energy. But back to Mercury. So again, Mercury rules communication and relationships. So the advice is usually to triple check everything you send, to be a little more patient and understanding because people are going to miscommunicate, and to not make any big or important decisions or purchases if you can, because there are aspects that you will either miss or not fully understand the terms of. But the big note is to not start anything new, again, if you can. So, if someone says you need to have this interview on this date and it's during the retrograde, that's out of your control. But if you intentionally plan to do your interview during this time, basically just know that mishaps will happen, or things might not be as they appear, or you might not be getting the full picture of the situation. But the understanding is that a lot of the mishaps will be for new initiatives or new relationships. Like, if I meet somebody new during a retrograde, it's not that I won't put in the effort to maintain the relationship. I'm just not surprised if the relationship drops off. I know some people are like, they get mad because I know people will use astrology very firmly in how they live their life. So, if they find out that you're a Scorpio or they find out you're a Gemini, they might be like, this relationship's over, and people don't like that. And I don't use it that firmly. I more so use it as okay, well, this didn't work out. This happened during this period. That's probably what led to this. I get the frustration, but I also understand the people who are just like, I don't want to play games either. So the belief is that if you're returning to something, whether that's a project or a relationship during Mercury retrogrades, then you're much more likely to not have as many issues. Susan Miller, who is that bitch when it comes to astrology, writes on her website Astrology Zone that although these Mercury retrograde periods can be frustrating, they are often useful too, for they allow us to reassess, revisit, readdress, redo, and redesign our plans. Sometimes we rush along in life without fully considering our basic assumptions or actions. Mercury retrograde allows us to stop, look, listen, and redirect our energies more productively. Mercury also helps us find closure to certain situations. Now, even for the most skeptic of y'all out there, I hope that you can at least agree with me that it's not a bad thing to take time to slow down and think about if our actions and our thoughts are actually bringing us what we want in life. And that's actually what I prefer to focus on when I talk about Mercury retrograde, rather than the unexplainable woo-woo aspect of all the chaos. I find that aspect of it, because you can't explain how the universe is converging to make you miss your bus or create all these delays and mishaps, that's what turns people off. Although let me just say, just because you can't explain something doesn't mean there's not validity to it. We just haven't found the words for it. But I still respect how that can be hard for people to grasp onto and just accept. So I would say to think about retrogrades as a quarterly reset in the universe, where the universe is asking you to slow down and examine what's been working for you and what hasn't. It's the perfect time to reflect and to surrender to our problems and our frustrations, because the only way out is through. Now, if you're American, I know that sounds like a painful, torturous, slow death, because we love to hustle, hustle, hustle and always see results. But one of the greatest unintended benefits that I got from going back to grad school was an appreciation for the process of how things get done, and that productivity does not always mean having to produce something at the end of the time that you spent working on it. I feel like before I went back, especially because of the work environment I was in at BuzzFeed, there was always pressure to produce. There always had to be output if we logged in time to work on a project. And I can now say that I think the pressure is what leads to burnout for creatives, and honestly, just people of all industries, I guess. But you know, when we talk about the creative process, for example, the creative process is just that, a process. When you grow a plant in seed form, right? You don't just throw out the plant just because you've been watering it and taking care of it for several days and there's no plant yet. We respect the process that the plant has to go through. I mean, think about what it must have been like for our early ancestors who were learning how to grow their food from seeds. They had none of the information that we have now about the growing process. They just had to do the work and have faith or a belief that their work would provide them with results, because they knew that they were being intentional with the work that they were doing. They knew that even though there wasn't an immediate output, that their work in the process still mattered. And the crazy thing is that in our modern times, we know all of this. We know what it takes for plants to grow. And we still lose our shit and get all doubtful that we did it wrong just because we don't see a sprout in like 5 minutes. The process, whether that's for creative things or business endeavors or picking up a language, the process takes the time that it takes. But when capitalism gets involved, that's when our respect for the time it takes gets thrown out the window. When capitalism gets involved, it's all about hitting benchmarks and meeting KPIs. I mean, do you think a plant gives a fuck about your benchmark? And this is not to diminish the value of setting deadlines. Deadlines are important, but I just want to help you reframe what it means to be productive, and that you don't always need to have output at the end of a work session in order for it to be considered productive. You know, for me as a writer, for example, if I set aside an hour to work on a script, and in that hour, all I end up doing is writing out the title, and that's it. I just spend the rest of the time staring at the screen and working through what I want that first line to be, then that period of time does not need to be logged down as a waste. That time was also productive for me, even if it didn't produce a level of output that I wanted to achieve. Like even with writing out what I wanted to say for this episode, let me tell y'all, I was dragging my feet all week. I would write some stuff out and then I'd stare at the screen and get frustrated because I was like, oh my God, I need to have this done by this date so that I can record by this date and I can put it up by this date. And I got so caught up in all of these deadlines and that pressure that I had to step back and be like, wait, I set the deadlines. Like, truly, what is the worst thing that's going to happen if I don't have output at the end of this session? I publish a day late? Yeah, that's not the greatest habit to create, but if it's every once in a while, it's okay. I've been rereading Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway after the episode I did a few weeks back, and I don't know how the universe does this. I swear it's like the universe communicates with me through books because I always seem to pick up the book that has the exact message that I need to hear. So in Feel the Fear, she offers up this mantra to repeat to yourself when you find yourself being crippled by your fear. She says, whatever happens to me, given any situation, I can handle it. And she offers this mantra on the premise that a lot of our fear comes from not being able to trust ourselves. You know, have you ever done the thing where you're like, oh my God, I would not be able to survive without my job? Or I would not be able to live if my partner left me. You know, that like doomsday thing, that worst case scenario, we fantasize about it and then we tell ourselves that we wouldn't be able to handle it, that we wouldn't be strong enough to deal with it. Not even realizing that we are creating our fear. We are reinforcing with our thoughts that we are not good enough or strong enough or whatever it is to handle our problems. And then you wonder why it's so hard to conquer them when the problem finally arises. It's because you said you weren't good enough to handle your problems and you thought your fear into existence. So Susan Jeffers, she's the author, she offers this really poignant question. If you knew you could handle anything that came your way, what would you possibly have to fear? The answer is nothing. So if we knew, like, a version of us in the future came and teleported back and told us that we were on the right track and that no matter what problem came across our doorstep, that we would figure it out, we would totally just trust the process. We would just handle it. There'd be no doubts, no negative self-talk. We'd just do it because we'd trust, because our future self told us that we're gonna kill it. Y'all know I've been unemployed since July. And when it happened, I was freaking out because I was like, oh my God, I have a mortgage now. I can't fuck around with that. This is terrible. All the things. And I kept thinking to myself, oh my God, what if I lose my house? I worked so hard to get it, la la la. And it wasn't until reading Feel the Fear again that I was like, oh my God, she is so right. Like, yes, this has been difficult. All right. My partner has also been struggling with getting consistent work in his industry right now. So money is real tight. And I've had to lean on my parents sometimes for support, which I hate. I mean, I'm very appreciative of it because there was definitely a time in our lives where that would not have been an option. But I'm a really independent person. I want to be able to pay my own bills and take care of myself. I mean, I'm the type of person where, like, as a kid, I dreamt of taking care of my parents. But I was obsessed with being like, I'm going to buy my mom a house. I'm going to, pay off her car. My parents are going to be taken care of. But when I took a step back and really looked at my thoughts, I was like, oh my God, this is all ego. See, there's that Leo ego coming up. This is all about me not wanting to look a certain way instead of realizing that I'm handling my situation. It may not be the way that I want. It is uncomfortable to have to ask your parents for money as a grown person, but it doesn't change the fact that in the face of hardship, I'm not crumbling. I'm not on the floor in the fetal position. I'm not weak. I'm figuring my shit out and making sure I have what I need to pay my bills. I'm applying to jobs. I'm interviewing. I'm reaching out and networking. I'm doing the work, which means I will get a job and I will be able to pay my own way again. It might not be on my timeline, which fucking sucks. I'm like, why? I think my timeline is pretty fucking great, but that's life. I listen to the Life Coach School podcast, and I love that Brooke, she runs the podcast, reminds her listeners that we cannot be happy 100% of the time. Life is 50% positive emotion and 50% negative emotion. It's just part of the process. So instead of trying to avoid it, just feel it, accept it. I can be unhappy about my problems and still handle them. Handling our problems does not always have to be joyous. It just needs to happen. Okay, I know that was a long ways away from our topic, but I think it was an important detour to take. Okay, so again, retrogrades are about surrendering, but they're also about reconnecting. So Susan Miller writes that Mercury rules everything that begins with redo, reassess, repair, repeat, redesign, revisit. With it being the holiday season, there's a high likelihood that you're going to run into people from your past. And I found for myself with retrogrades that the people I tend to reconnect with are people with whom I have unfinished business and that the retrograde is helping to provide closure. Funny story. So a year ago, I invited a bunch of BuzzFeed people that I hadn't seen in a while to come up and check out the house and just reconnect. We hadn't done it in a while. And like the day before we're all supposed to get together, somebody got COVID and completely derailed the hangout. And nobody picked up the pieces after that. There was so much chaos just trying to set the date that the fact that we finally nailed it down and then the person got COVID, it was just like, we're done. And then crazy enough, during the last Mercury retrograde this year, which I think was around August, September, randomly, one of the guys in the group is like, are we hanging out or what? And again, this was totally out of the blue. And we ended up seeing each other and finally bringing closure to this event that we planned a year ago. Susan Miller actually believes that if you hear from an old friend or a colleague during Mercury retrograde, that there is a potent reason for it and that there is something that the two of you are meant to do or plan together. But all of this is to say that with it being the holiday season and a Mercury retrograde at the same time, you're most likely going to run into some people from your past, and that it might be a great opportunity for you to reconsider one of those words with this relationship. So reassess, repair, revisit. Sometimes, especially when it comes to making friends as an adult, we're so focused on bringing new people into our lives that we might not see that what we're looking for is already in our orbit. I was working on a future episode the other day around interracial friendships. So I was going through all of my friend groups that I had in high school and college and as an adult. And as I was going through my college friends, I was like, oh my God, I don't think I had any white female friends in college. I knew of white women and I was friendly with them, but I didn't have any close relationships with them while in college. So I'm really racking my brain. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, wait, I had my friend Jade. But then I was like, well, Jade was in my orbit during college because she was good friends with two people that I was good friends with. But she and I only became good friends ourselves after college when we were the only two people in our class who decided to live in LA after graduation, which even as I say it, I'm like, that shit's crazy. Like, I cannot believe I went to a pretty small school. So when I say class, I think there was like 200 of us. But still, to know that out of 200 people, only 2 people stayed in LA is nuts. But anyway, I can't tell you if we reconnected during a retrograde back then, but I do think it's a great example of how finding new friendships doesn't always have to involve meeting new people. It can also be reconnecting with old friends or getting to know people who you've known or that have been in your orbit, but you've never had the opportunity to get close with. The other thing that I also want to propose when it comes to retrogrades and reconnections is that yes, a person might pop up because maybe you're meant to work together on something. I love that Big Sister Auntie Queen Susan Miller is leaning on the side of positivity. We love that. But as someone who leans on the side of realness, I would also offer to you that a person might pop up again because there are feelings that you haven't dealt with about this particular relationship, and that this could be a great time for you to work through those feelings. If you're new here, I wrote a book several years ago. It was a non-conventional weight loss book. And in chapter 4, which is all about how our friendships affect our weight loss goals, I talk about a psychological phenomenon called spontaneous recovery in a section of the book that is all about grieving and letting go of relationships that no longer serve us. The book is available on Amazon if you'd like to check it out, but I'm going to read a little section for you here because I think it really relates to what we're talking about. As I'm sure you can imagine, letting go of a relationship can be tough for a variety of reasons. The memories formed and the history built can start flashing before your eyes in a way that makes you question whether or not you're doing the right thing. But in psychology, this phenomenon is known as spontaneous recovery, or the display of feelings and behaviors thought to be extinct, but that have actually been dormant, and it can greatly complicate our ability to let go. It is the reason behind why we might consider getting back together with an ex after a long period of separation, because in the past we conditioned ourselves to love this person throughout the initial run of the relationship. So seeing them again at first might fill us with feelings of love because our brain is recovering dormant emotions. We are being reintroduced to a stimulus that at one point brought us great joy. And so we initially respond with joy because it is natural to us. But it's important to note that dormant emotions often do not signal hidden desires. I'm gonna read that again. I'm like, look at me. All right. It's important to note that dormant emotions often do not signal hidden desires. Many people might mistake dormant emotions as a sign that they want to get back together. But in actuality, it represents that you have only buried your emotions for this person. You didn't go through the process of unlearning them or letting them go. Spontaneous recovery can make it difficult to understand if leaving the relationship is what you really want, because the return of the positive conditioned feelings can make it seem like you actually don't want to let go. But this is where using your tools like your intuition or your relationship BATNA, which is a process that I will go over in the last episode for this season, so look out for that. So your relationship BATNA can be crucial to help remind you why you've gotten to this point in your relationship. Unlike what your fear might be saying to you, it's not like you arrived at this point out of nowhere or irrationally. You went through a thoughtful evaluation process, and this is where it led you. It's unfortunate, but that doesn't mean you were stupid for being close to this person or that they were a bad person. It's important to keep in mind that people can be good and still not be a right fit for you as a friend. So I actually had a best friend of mine just recently go through this process with someone they used to be close to. She actually texted me that she was going to visit this girl that we both knew in high school. And she was like, oh my gosh, fly up here with me. She's not that far from you. And I was like, girl, would love that, but I'm poor. So she went to visit her anyway. And when she got back, she's like, you know, I don't think me and this girl really fit as friends anymore. And she goes on to tell me about moments that they had where the chemistry just felt off. And she felt sad about it. But I was like, you know, at least you now know. Like I said earlier, life is 50% positive emotion and 50% negative emotion. But we all don't come to that realization at the same time in life. So, you know, sometimes we're friends with people when things are going great in their life, amazing, and then we don't see them for a while. And then when we do, things are not as great and they're having a hard time accepting that 50% negative emotion. And we see another side to them that's not compatible to where we are now. It happens. This is not to say that I think you should abandon people who are struggling, but it goes back to the energy vampire episode. Is this person actively trying to handle their shit, but, you know, they're just upset about it? Or are they making themselves out to be a victim? Are they making you carry their load? Remember that time is not what makes a good friend. Actions are what make a good friend. So as I close out today's episode, I just want to recap that Mercury retrograde, but also retrogrades in general, may cause chaos, but it's actually more productive to view them as quarterly opportunities to revisit, reassess, revise, repair, redesign, reconnect, all of the words. Productivity and output are not synonymous. It is possible to be productive and not have output at the end when you're not moving on capitalism's timeline. And I would also say that this is relevant to the friend-making process as well, because you're going to be putting yourself out there and potentially getting rejected or, you know, not feel a connection with the people you're meeting. But that doesn't mean that your effort in doing so is a waste. You're building your resolve, you're building your character. You know, remember the plants. Seeds do not sprout overnight, but that does not mean watering them and taking care of them is any less important. Okay, next recap. You can and you will handle anything life throws at you. You might not like how it's thrown at you, and you might not like your options and how you have to handle it. But again, life is 50% positive emotion and 50% negative, okay? Don't overlook the potential friendships that exist in your orbit. Use reconnection opportunities to see if there are people that you know, but that there's room for depth in the relationship. And lastly, don't be afraid to grieve and let go of relationships that are no longer serving you. Remember that spontaneous recovery, the act of responding with dormant emotions, is not always a signal of rekindling a relationship, but rather a sign that you still have emotions that you need to process through, doing that grieving and let go. I want to make sure my phone don't interrupt me for this story. All right, so I'm going to leave you with this. I had a best friend in high school, and due to love triangles and quadrangles and all kinds of mess, our relationship went to shit. And I was devastated for a long time about losing that relationship. And then during my senior year of college, he popped up randomly, probably during a retrograde, I feel like it was, to tell me that he wanted to apologize and reconnect. And I was shooketh, y'all. I was like, what? So we do a video chat, and just like my best friend who went through it with her old friend from high school, I felt the exact same way about reconnecting with this guy. I remember getting off the call and feeling like, okay, well, that was something. And we tried to text for a bit afterwards, but then he said something that made me realize that I wasn't missing out on anything by us not being friends anymore. But that's what I kept telling myself before he reached out. And this conversation made me realize that I wasn't doing any favors to myself for being devastated by the end of our relationship in high school. We had a really beautiful friendship that in some ways I wish could have been maintained throughout time, but it didn't for a reason. And I'm not worse off without him in my life. I've actually been doing and continue to do really well for myself. And, he had a really rough go of it after high school. He got into drugs. He had a moment of homelessness. I don't think he finished college. And when I was telling him about my plans to work in the film industry and all the things I was accomplishing for myself at the time, and this was all before I even knew I would go on to work at BuzzFeed, it's not that I felt like he was being a hater, but the energy just felt weird. It felt like, I don't know, like he wanted to be in charge of my success and tell me how I needed to go about my life and what timelines I should accomplish my goals on. And it was really weird. It was not helpful. I was actually pretty pissed the fuck off at his audacity. And it made me realize like, oh yeah, no, I'm good on this relationship. And it allowed me to make peace with it. And I stopped carrying that sadness about what once was, and I finally just accepted what is. So I hope you are able to have a meaningful and productive retrograde, that you have a beautiful holiday. This will be coming out on Thanksgiving, and that you're able to reconnect with relationships that serve you, or that you grieve and let go of the ones that don't. As always, if you're having any thoughts, feelings, or revelations that you want to share with me, please feel free to hit me up on social media. You can join our free Facebook group, or you can become part of our exclusive Patreon. Again, the last episode of the season is December 19th, which means we'll have 2 episodes left after the break next week. And then season 2 will start up again in early February. But I will also have much more time to be active on social after the end of the season. So make sure you're still following all the accounts so we can still stay connected during the break. All right, besties, that's it for now. Again, have a lovely holiday. I will catch you later. Your girl is out. Loving Real Talk Friend Therapy? Of course you are. So don't forget to show us some love with a 5-star review wherever you are listening, and to join our Patreon to unlock bonus recordings, videos, private chats, and more.